Yeah, that's, we're being recorded, and good morning, fellas. And as we have recited the breastplate this morning, tomorrow is St. Patrick's Day, and in sync with our tradition, we did that. And that's an amazing piece that we've been doing for quite some time. We're in, of course, the Gospel according to John, and this morning we're going to move ahead in verses 11 through 16. So let's get started. Last time we looked at, we examined the difference in perception regarding what happened. As you recall, there's a healing, a man who was born blind, a beggar within Jerusalem near the temple area, was healed. A miraculous, marvelous event. And what we have looked at are the perceptions regarding this event, people who witnessed it. We saw how a group of people make up a story to explain what they didn't understand. There was a high need by all parties to understand, prompted by that word how. How did this happen? How did this happen? It echoes many times throughout this. And what we looked at last week is one group not understanding it. They actually make up their own story, thus human nature. The value of what happened, that is the man's healing, doesn't even seem to matter. That's a secondary issue. It's how the group perceives it. What governs each self-created response from the group, is demonstrated, is the manner in which each group filters what actually occurred. They're seeing it through a set of eyeglasses, and they're responding accordingly. The crowd cannot explain what happened, thus the word how, which creates an internal agitation. Something is going on inside of them because they can't get their arms around it. Therefore, the questioning observed within the story, it's not motivated by a need for clarity, but rather to rid themselves of their self-created agitation. They're being motivated by something else, something deep within that they may not be aware of. They have no need, or they have no desire to know the truth. They want to just feel better. They want to feel better about themselves. And very, very human, and something I can really relate to. So today, here's the text from last time. So they were saying to him, how then were your eyes opened? There's that question. And it sets the scene for 11 through 16. And would one of you guys read that, verses 11 through 16? And that's the text for today.
Okay, everyone's quiet. He replied, the man they called Jesus made some mud and put it on my eyes. He told me to go to the Siloam and wash. So I went and I washed and I could see. Where is this man? They asked him. I don't know. They brought to the Pharisees the man who'd been blind. Now the day in which Jesus made the mud and opened the man's eyes was a Sabbath. Therefore the Pharisees also asked him how he received his sight. Put mud on my eyes, the man replied, and I washed, and now I see. Some of the Pharisees said, this man is not from God, for he does not keep the Sabbath. But others asked, how can a sinner do such marvelous signs? So they were divided.
All righty. Thanks, Bill. And that's the text. That's the story. This is the response. This is the scuttlebutt, the street talk of what's going on. And so where this section leads us is to this idea of dissension. That's a separation in opinion. It's just, we ask the question, gee, why don't they all put on their dancing shoes and just dance and celebrate this man's healing? But human nature will not allow them to do that. And so that's what we're drawn into, to look at. The background of the text is what we looked at last week. So they were saying to him, how did this happen? We've got to know because it will make us feel better. Now, they didn't say that, but that's my perception of it. So we're going to watch this line. We're going to see an escalation here, and looking commentary or commenting on the verses very briefly as we move up to the upper right to dissension. The section opens up with a man's response to the question, which is really not a question motivated to bring clarity and unity and engagement. It's to actually defend their position and to make them feel better about themselves. The man responds with exact detail and outcome, exactly what happened, verse 11. Then the next step is they question, well, where is he? They want evidence. They're grappling again, so they feel better about themselves. He says, I don't know where he is. And then the next step is they seek a bigger hammer. Boy, is this something we can relate to or not? When I don't get my way, what I tend to do is look for a bigger hammer, a louder voice, more detail, a biblical scripture to support my position. And what we have is just, when we fight fire with fire, all we get is a bigger fire. I heard that once, and that is so true of human nature, is to support what I already believe. Then there is a interlude, a very quick interlude. It's John inserted this in verse 14 to set the context for what's going to follow. It's the Sabbath day. Jesus healed this man on a Sabbath. Now, we could say that is a Saturday, or we could say a ceremonial Sabbath in regard to the temple, in regard to the occasion, the festivities at the temple. I don't know, it doesn't really matter, but it was a designated Sabbath day of rest. And we've already looked at that. That's a big deal. The man responds, the healed man responds with a shorter version. When he's asked by the Pharisees, these people bring him, the humility, the humiliation that they drag him around and bring him to the bigger guns. They ask him the very same question because they're all working out of the same context. And he then responds to them with the same thing in verse 15, shorter version. Then comes the Sabbath pushback and the mixed opinion. In verse 16, we see how some of them said this man could not be of God. He's a sinner because he broke the Sabbath. On the other hand, we really see a polarization. They were saying, well, if he's a sinner, how could he do such great things? Okay. And there is, that leads us to dissension in verse 16. So that's a quick rundown. We've already seen it before, and it is now before us. The major point that I put across this whole screen is that the provided detail by the man, very patient, describing what happened to himself, does not result in clarity of understanding. He could not be more clear, more concise. He has no intent in shaping what he says or cloaking. He says what happened, and here we have before us the response of what actually happened. Very far from what the truth actually is. So what then causes this dissension? That's what we want to deep dive down into. And we're back to our model. I find this model really helpful to me to help me understand the disparity in the dialogue, what's going on. So first of all, what is we attempt to look at the dissension in these two groups. I identify that the crowd collectively is responding from a layer 2 perception. Now I'm going to talk about layer 2. Now, guys, I don't know what I've said here or not, but my idea of this model is that there are 3 layers, 1, 2, 3, and these are untransformed layers that need to be satisfied before you and I can really move here. And I think that's the calling of Jesus, this calling of letting go. And the idea, layer 1 is about security and safety. Layer 2 is about belonging. And we'll talk about that because I think they're being motivated by that. And then layer 3 is power. And the idea here, there's a lot of detail we could talk about, but it doesn't relate right now. The idea, though, the big idea is that one layer must be satisfied before I can move to the second. If I am a guy dying of thirst, I can't talk about spiritual matters or even worry about my influence on the world if I am dying of thirst. That has to be satisfied. And that's true of every layer, 1, 2, 3. And unless that layer is satisfied, I can't move into the next layer. I don't even get it. I don't understand it. It's like water off a duck's back. That is the idea. And then what happens in life in transformation, the dark line, and we're going to see this over and over, is where a person gets to a point in their life where this does no longer works. This no longer works, and they're willing to give up their own stuff, their own constructs. And I believe that is what the major message of Jesus is, this giving up, the losing of the one's life to find it, the grain of wheat falling into the ground and dying. When we give it up, then new life, and we haven't even talked about what's inside here, but new life results. And that's a very simplistic, but there's a lot there, idea of transformation. So these people are responding from layer 2, and that has everything to do with belonging. Belonging. There exists a legitimate need for all human beings to be loved and to extend love. That's what layer 2 is about. This is the natural need shared by all and to be satisfied through normal human interaction. God has made us in such a way that as we receive love and as we extend love to other people within our life, our daily life, that need both to give and to receive is satisfied. However, there is a downside. And when I don't receive that, or where I don't feel loved, and where I don't perceive it, there is a destruction that festers into one of two directions. This need, legitimate need, it goes south, and it goes south far, and it raises its head. It manifests itself in one of two ways. One, and it's like two ends of a spectrum, with people landing in different places. But if my need for belonging is not satisfied, what I ended up doing is viewing myself as a victim, or I go the other way and I put myself into an over domineering kind of perception, because I exert power, or I view myself, take the place of a victim. And these are two extremely unhealthy approaches in a negative response for this need to be loved. Now, notice I kind of wrote it out as a mathematical equation. Those two are over the common denominator of both fueled by a not worthy self-perception. If I'm in a position where I'm not receiving what I think I need to receive, it's because I don't feel worthy, and I don't feel worthy of love. And that manifests itself in two ways. Either I take that role of a victim and try to gain what I'm not getting through getting pity from people through a victim self-perception, or I try to exert power and clout people over the heads and dominate. And they're both motivated from an inner need that's not being met. And I think that goes, I'm not making this up. I think it goes right to Genesis chapter 3. This whole idea of self-compensation. When the man and the woman sinned against God, they put themselves into a place of self-compensation. They made themselves fig leaves. You know, they had to figure it out through their creative kind of way. What do we need to do? We need to do something. Well, we need to cover ourselves. So they self-compensated because something wasn't right. And I think that's really a great launching pad for the rest of the scriptures on what we're seeing. We're seeing this thing over and over and over again. So that we got the little formula. Now, to continue on with this idea of layer 2, when an individual or a group, because we like groups, they make us feel better. When we function from an unsatisfied layer 2 or any of the layers, the information designed to inform, to give us clarity, to help us understand and grapple, it's simply not heard. It's like, here it is, water off a duck's back. If what is happening in our world right now is an illustration of this. What we have noticed, two people sitting down to the table, arguing over religious ideas. It's part of our history. It's because they're not hearing each other, both in a place of self-protection, wanting to be right, this need to be right, and it's all motivated by an inner sense of woundedness. And that's what it's an unsatisfied need that's being met, or that. And I think we're talking about the human condition, really the nuts and the bolts. Now, if I'm a parent and I have a teenager in this kind of situation, what I tend to do is think that, what they really need is more information. I need to put it in a different way. So what I tend to do is get sucked into this whole thing, and I try to provide more information, articles to read, and Johnny, you really shouldn't be involved with cocaine, whatever it is, and a reasoning, facts, warnings, threats, screaming, I'll try anything to try to save them. And it's not being heard. And I think probably everybody on this call has had a situation, probably on both sides. I've been on both sides of that. And I go, God, where is your head? They can't hear it. They can't hear it. Thus, we're looking at a way of looking at the human condition, where we're at here. The other, who's on the other side of the table, who's having the difficulty, who's the layer 2 person, they perceive the immediate instance just like they filter everything, and that is through their own unsatisfied perceptions. Thus, the water off, the duck's back. They see this instance like they see everything. And we have talked about, or all of you've raised teenagers, so you go teen brain. Well, it's really bigger than that. It's human brain. It's human brain. If I'm in an area of an unsatisfied, legitimate need that's not being met, I'm not going to hear it. You can talk to me like till you're blue in the face, and I'm not going to hear it because I hear what I want to hear. This then explains why the mixed crowd moves towards dissension. There is no desire to truly know what the truth is. If you have A and B perceptions like we have before us, and each are looking for what actually happened, they can arrive at a truth. That is a drawing together, a bringing together, but they're not interested in that. They're interested in supporting their own place. No desire to truly know. That in itself, it's too frightening, because for me to do that means I have to give up a portion of what I already hold to. And that's just it's without some place to go, Jesus Christ, it's just too difficult. I can't do it. I can't do it. Remember that movie, Fiddler on the Roof? I love Tevye. And, the character of Tevye, when he's meeting with his daughter and she wants to go out and join the revolutionists, and he goes, I just can't bend. That's too far. I just can't bend. He's stating verbally what is many of us have encountered many times. I just can't bend this far. It's too frightening. It's just too frightening. How they see this is, now I'm going back to the crowd, how they as individuals and collectively see, how they see the mechanics of how they see, how it works. It's informed by what they have allowed themselves to see. That's what we want to see. We see this instance, they see this instance like they see everything through their own eyes, unwilling to move to, unwilling to come together. And that happens to be what Jesus talks about in John 17, is a coming together, Father, that they may be one as we are one. And what's holding us back is ourselves. Now, here's a note, and it says this, and here's the essence of the note. The Pharisees see Jesus as out. He's on the outside. And the reason he's on the outside is because he violated something that they hold dear. He healed the man on the wrong day. It's ludicrous when we look at it. The man was born blind and now he sees. And they can't get past the fact that it was Saturday. He's obviously a sinner. This is how ludicrous our thinking is. And these guys are religiously trained people. Okay, so there's the out. Now, where my head naturally goes, I want to be the good guy. I want to wear the big white hat and I want to bring Jesus in. So in the story, you want to be like the other people. I don't think so. the others allow Jesus in. Okay, they allow him in. That's good because of their pragmatic reasoning. Okay, they're saying, well, gee, if he heals this guy and this guy can see, he's obviously not a sinner. Those are good words. Those are really good words. I think they're absolutely sincere words. And I think it's probably a better place to be. But here's my point. Both groups are operating in a human condition of fallenness from an in-out perspective, which is it's a direct outcome of an unsatisfied layer 2. They're both putting Jesus on a witness stand. And they're both saying, okay, he's out because he did it on the Sabbath. The others are saying, no, he's in. They are positioning themselves as the judge here. And they are judging based on Jesus's performance. Should we allow him in or should we allow him out? Thus, they're both operating from an untransformed way of thinking, an in or an out. You know, are they safe or are they unsafe? Is this, do we buy this or do we not buy this? And of course, we come to a place of judge, but it's, in my life, it's been way too quick, many, many times. And so that's my point there, that by me wanting to go and identify with the good guys in the story, I want to be the good guys, is a very fact showing that I'm not getting it. I'm not getting what the point is. This shows the human condition that we're in right here. So in the table, okay, we got some time. We got some good time here. So as we go into our discussion, the letter, you know, I'm making a statement that's pretty obvious. This letter was not written to me. You know, it was written to the first century church towards the end of John's life, and for specific reasons. But it wasn't written to me, but I see myself in this story. I see myself reflected through the demonstration of this mixed crowd. I have operated with this framework many, many times. And I don't think it's where we want to be, you know, as men. If this is true for me and others like me, because I claim to be a Christ follower. I am a Christ follower. I am like you on a journey of transformation, but yet I have operated in these out of these lower layers, and I'm very familiar with those. How then can we, people like me, equip ourselves to respond from what Jesus calls elsewhere as the mind of Christ? So, you know, going back to our diagram here, and we've used this before, I can identify with it. Whoop, I don't want to do that. That causes problems. Timeout. Just forget that. I'll erase that later. But right here is where we're looking at the crowd, both sides, these people, untransformed responses that I can identify with. I can understand their response. Jesus is always coming from the bullseye here. The road to transformation is from here to here. This is where, you know, it's not like we I don't think it's something we attain to. I think it's something we become aware of. And I have within me the ability to, and this isn't, I think we all know what it means to operate out of here. But I have noticed that in my own life, I tend to slip back to here. I can do it, but at least I can catch myself. And at least at 68 now, I know more that when I'm slipping back and doing this. So if this is true, getting back to our table time, what are some things that you guys can come up with? Let's talk about this transformational process. What can we do to equip ourselves as believers to respond more often out of the mind of Christ? You know, that's where we want to be. That's where we all desire to be. So how do we do it? Is it a doing? Is it a thinking? Is it a being? I'd love for you to share with us what your thoughts are.
Hey, Mike, I'm going to have to bail. I've got an early appointment. I wish I could stay, but
yeah.
But anyway, it was very good. Have a good discussion.
Thanks for coming, week. Bob.
All right.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Yep.
See you now. So Bob has to leave, but what are your thoughts, guys? I mean, I'm not asking for the right answer here. I'm really, what are your thoughts on this journey of transformation?
Well, I think I was just looking up trying to find it. It's in there somewhere, but in 1st and 2nd Corinthians, Paul makes the statement that we, and he uses a plural, have the mind of Christ. And I was reading someone taking it that there's a sense of, I don't have the mind of Christ, and you don't have the mind of Christ. But together we may pull, we're all going to look at the different things, and you need a diversified aggregation people to arrive at the mind of Christ, that's one of the things I'm wrestling with, because to get there, you got to be humble. You got to realize somebody else may have something to say.
Yeah. No, yeah.
And so I need to add that, and I need to lay down. That doesn't mean I roll over and lay down my ideas, but I consider them as someone else. And altogether, I think we come to that's why the church is always a corporate body. The church is not an individual. And so in my thinking, this concept of being diverse and having open, humble conversations is one way to get to the mind of Christ.
That is really good. The idea of community, a real functioning community where we're really talking, is what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Before we move off of that, Bill, what would that look like? Or anybody?
Table time. I remember for a while we had a little Presbyterian church out in LaPorte there, and it was a traditional, and we were in the area, but we got to know our neighbors there, and they would have a sermon, have the service. And after service, they always had a soup lunch. They had a kitchen there like a good church should have, and tables there. And they had a soup lunch. We'd all sit around and we'd argue and discuss over what was spoken that day.
Huh.
I thought that had a lot of value.
Yeah. Okay, there you go. A place. Now, I think what you hit on is really key. Right now, for many, many of us, church is a duty that I have to go to, a duty that I do because it's a discipline. And in the back of my head, I feel this is my obligation as a Christian, but I go do my duty and then I can leave. Then I'm free to do, but you're talking about something entirely different, an engagement with other people in order to shape our lives in such a way that brings about maybe low-level, long-term change. Is that?
Yeah, I'm thinking, I don't know, but my understanding is for with you and Steve, that's kind of Isn't that how the Plymouth Brethren kind of operated when they have their meetings? There
Well,
wasn't a
Steve,
dominant voice.
you want to comment? Yeah, it's a very endearing history to me. Steve, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, there was opportunity for that. I don't know if I can really sort of apply that. I mean, sometimes that opportunity, well, there was a heavy emphasis on, sort of from the book of Acts, you study the scriptures, to really know, well, when you encourage that, you encourage a lot of different conclusions. In some cases on some pretty fine points, and over time, sometimes you don't come to a tolerance of what other people may believe in regard to certain fine points, and so you go off and you create your own new branch, new limb on the tree.
So it creates dissension.
Yeah, so it works sometimes and sometimes it doesn't.
So Steve, did you sit in a circle?
Well, in some cases, yes, depending on the church.
size.
I mean, a lot of these were called halls, HALLS. So if you didn't have pews and so on, if you had folding chairs, which I was raised in one of those, for some of the gatherings, yeah, you sat in a circle instead of in rows.
Yeah. So interesting, Bill, that you bring up this idea of body. How about Jesus, where he says 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there I am in the midst, right? So
Yeah.
this idea, we're very on this journey by myself, and maybe there is something with a group, and group dynamics are interesting.
Yeah,
So
they're
if
right. They could coalesce or they could explode. Yeah, it's either way.
If it's just 4 of us, right, on this call, on this conversation, it's different. 6 is different than 4, but when you go to 8 and 10, it becomes a different dynamic. So all of a sudden, when you go from a smaller group to a bigger group, how do you have a bigger group, let's say 50 or 100, and how does it stay engaging?
I think it's through orthopraxy.
Well, sure. So we sing songs.
No, not
singing.
Yeah, that's true. But orthopraxy, how we behave and what we do, how we live life and go, and how we do things versus how we think. We can coalesce around being kind to people. We can all diversify why we're being kind and all that behind it. But if we're all out on the same project, that kind of brings cohesion.
Yeah, but anyway, back to Mike's thing with transformation.
Okay.
Right. And so much of Mike's drive is through the mind of Christ, and through the mind of Christ, we tend to think in terms of thinking. But as a man thinketh in his heart, so he is. So I think Jews had a much bigger idea of thinking. It was the heart was the center of a person, right? So the heart has more to it than thinking. So the question becomes, how do we get in the center of the circle? Right? How do we get to life? How do we get there?
With a PhD.
I know.
With me, it's fine.
A PhD.
I want to piggyback on what Steve was saying. Overall, the chapel experience for Sandra and I was very, very positive. The emphasis on the scriptures, on discipleship, some really good things. But I know the outcome for me, and I was much younger in an informative way, was there was a spoken belief that every Sunday, we met on Sundays, when we had our worship time, we were doing this in a sense, in obedience to what we called, in our language, was God's appointed way. God's appointed way. So there was a sense of every Sunday, a fulfillment of God's appointed way. And what was designed for a small intimacy and a fellowship and could really move us to, dialoguing about where we're really at and so forth, really, for me, Steve, me personally, became a fulfillment of an obligation, and I should recruit other people to come and share that same thing, certainly other believers, but kind of be squad leaders, because if you were on the A team, you should meet like this and fulfill your weekly obligation. Nobody said that, but that's what I derived as a young, ego-centered young man who wanted to please God. That's what I did with it. And so the context was really set up for it. It's a wonderful context for fellowship, but I greatly missed the point of the whole thing. And I think that I'm not alone in that. So,
are we doomed to devolve in these, when we attempt to have a New Testament church, or however you want to phrase it? Is that in effect, is that doomed to fail?
That is a great question, and I want to try to answer that. I think that is a great question, a common question, but it's a wrong question.
Okay.
Not you're wrong. No, you're not wrong, Bill. Because I'm asking the same question. I think we are all saying, I moved from one context to another context because I thought that context was better. And it's not that. It's within any context, we can have the dynamics of what it means to have community. But I think it's a human issue. When I say wrong question, because we're looking in the wrong direction. By finding the right place, then I'm in, and that's a layer 2. That's a layer 2 way of thinking. So anyway, that's my point. Anybody else on that one?
Well, Mike, for me, and is it, if I recall right, that layer 2 is the layer for belonging.
Belonging, yeah.
Okay, so belonging. So I want to find people in my life that think like I do.
Yeah.
So, and sometimes that's to my detriment, because I might be wrong thinking in a certain area, but I'm finding people that bolster that thought. So I'm aligning with people that bolster a certain thought. And for me, a lot of times I'm saying to myself, we are right. And if we are right, then somebody else is wrong. And
Right.
I think for me to get past this second layer and third layer and get into the mind of Christ, I need to seek diligently the truth in Scripture without saying I'm right and somebody else is wrong. If I can find that truth in my own life through what I believe, the Scripture says, and with the help of other like-minded people, seek that truth without having to say somebody else is wrong. And I think I've used this example before. A guy named Mike Warnke is a comedian Christian from way back, and one of the lines I remember from his was somebody saying, don't you think you're narrow-minded? And he said, yes, but I can afford to be. I'm right. So the thing is, I don't want to get that way to where I'm saying I'm right and you're wrong. But I can get to that point where my belief is correct, even though there are other beliefs that are at least trying to get to the same truth I am, and maybe not where I am, and I don't say they're wrong, and I'm not saying this very well, but I think that for me to get to the mind of Christ, I have to get past saying that somebody else is wrong. That's part of my journey.
Well, I want to affirm what you're saying. I think you're saying it very well, and you're grappling with it like the rest of us. For me, it was I claimed I'm going to search the scriptures, and I think that's good. But now at this age, I'm becoming more and more aware of how I was searching the scriptures through my own perceptions.
Yeah.
And what needed, I had a horrible falling with business. I mean, a very decade of pain. And it took pain for me to really come to an end of my own. There was not one crucifixion, but I learned how to be crucified. And I think I think we've got to experience it. And Jeff, I know a little bit about you. You and Paula, you've got your stories. And these things are, we look at them as very difficult times, but I think they teach us the right things about about letting go, about what that looks like. And I think, boy, Jeff, I think it's a journey. I think it's a journey we're all on. And there's absolute truth. I think there's absolute truth. Jesus is speaking out of that all the time. But at this age, I don't think you have to be 68. I think it can be younger, but it has taken me a long time to feel safe, Jeff, to feel safe in my relationship with Jesus Christ, in order to really honestly self-assess to where I really am. Because otherwise it's been too scary. It's just, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. I just wanted to ask a question to you guys.
Yeah.
Can there be areas in our life where we have the mind of Christ in certain aspects of our thinking?
Yeah.
And other areas of our life where we're completely outside the mind of Christ?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely, Jeff. Yep.
That which I would, I do not. That which I do not, that I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think experience, people who have suffered through something, whatever that is, recovery from alcoholism, drug abuse, physical pain, in those areas, I think they speak with the mind of Christ in that area. How do you handle issues like gay issues? Well, talk to somebody whose son or brother is gay.
Yeah.
Don't talk to somebody who's never encountered it. Deal with people who've had to handle the things of life. And especially, they're thinking, they generally get beat up enough that they're softened,
Yeah, it's really true. And I find that my mind, Jeff, when we talk about layers, I generally want to go, well, I want to go to layer 7. My model, there's 7. The mind of Christ is layer 7. Oh, I want to be there. Am I there? Well, that's where my natural mind goes. But the reality is everyone on this call has experienced the mind of Christ. Everybody has. What the difference is at this age of life, I'm now more aware of when I slip out and respond from a sub layer, a sub layer. And I'm able to ask myself, gee, why are you so angry, Mike? And walk away rather than trying to bolster my own position. I'm able to catch it quicker. Do you find that to be true, Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, for me, in my way of thinking of trying to get to layer 7, to the mind of Christ, the only time I ever come close is when my motivation in a certain area is not selfish. It's a selfless motivation for my thinking. If I can be selfless in a situation, then I'm coming close to the mind of Christ. Anytime selfishness creeps in, then I am slipping right back out into those outer layers. So
that.
I think that's my way of thinking is, am I being selfish in my thinking, in my response, all of those kind of things. That's how I gauge whether I'm going in the right direction in this transformational journey.
So is the transformational journey something we do? First question. Second question, is the transformational journey selfish?
Ooh. It can be, I think, the transformational journey. It's weird because I want to be all that Christ wants me to be. Is that selfish? I think somewhat, but can I be all that Christ wants me to be without that selfless attitude that I was just talking about? And I don't know that I can be. So it's a right selfishness, I think, in wanting to transform into who Christ wants me to be. But I can't get there if that is my goal, if that is my thinking.
I think that everyone here has a different lens through which they have received some insight, some good insight into how to view the scriptures and Jesus and all these issues. And it's different than everybody else's. I have a lens I see through that has helped me a great deal, but it might not be the lens that works for you. Got a lot to do with personal experience,
For me, my lens, Jeff and Bill and John, well, all of you guys, is not so much my way. John, you probably aren't meaning it this way, but what I hear here is there's my way, which is a fallen way, and there's Jesus's way, and he's calling us to a different way. It's a different way. Well, there's truth to that. However, the way I perceive it is there is my way built on false constructs of thinking, and there is the way, what is actually real, what is actually true. And that's where Jesus is speaking. So it's not, for me, my lens, it's not so much I'm going to do it Jesus's way because I'm going to do it his way because it's a better way. I don't think that way. It's the only way. If I am to respond out of falsities, it's going to bring about pain. And a lot of the way my own perceptions, I need the body of Christ and to learn how to receive. Those things lead me into what truly is. And so we're saying the same thing, but it's a matter of lenses.
So is transformation something we do, or is it a byproduct?
It's certainly something I choose on a moment by moment basis.
I think it's a byproduct. My transformation, I only see in the rearview mirror.
Yeah.
I think you find yourself one day just you're different. and then you recall yourself to be, and you recognize that I'm transformed. Suddenly I could disagree with somebody and not think they're wrong, which was a foreign thought to me years ago, or maybe even months ago. Like what Jeff has realized and expressed, that I could totally disagree with this person and still think they're right. Because right doesn't begin and end with me. It's he has his life, I've got my life. It's right for him. I was thinking of, for some reason, of placebo, when these guys questioned the blind man and said, who healed you? And he can't be from God, because he did it on the wrong day. It's like, well, the reality is he can still see, for goodness sakes. I mean, how could you say it? Well, and we live this life in modern times. Doctors give people placebos all the time. They're part of trial groups. And then some guy, it gets delivered from a disease, only to find out that the doctor gave him saline solution or some damn thing. And it's like, well, wait a minute. Are you going to deny that he's healed because it's not a real drug? No, I mean, who knows how this stuff works, but you can't, the goal is for the guy to be healed. It's not to be healed in accordance with your right and wrong standard. The goal is to be healed, and he's healed.
The only guy on solid ground in this whole argument is the guy that's been healed, because he's sitting in the reality of the event, and everyone else is spinning around him trying to convince him otherwise.
Yeah.
And he's
exactly
scratching
correct.
his head, because you're asking me, where did he go? 2 minutes ago I was blind. What are you asking me for? I don't even know what a guy looks like.
That's a good one. That's a
Heard his
good
voice.
insight, man. Yeah, you're asking the wrong guy here.
Well, that all kind of sounds like a conversion experience, right? Right?
Yeah.
Like, how in the world, what happened? Right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
We're trying to say.
But that had happened is a big deal. I took a trip to Shambhala and Red Feather, and I see these guys up there, and they're going around the, whatever it's called, and meditating and doing things. And there were times in my life when I would not have gone. I would have thought, this is devil spirit central. This is not where I belong at all. And then I went, and it's like, it's pretty nice. It's peaceful. And then you get to meet some of the people, and you realize, except for the vocabulary, they think exactly the way I think. They're using different words, different names of people and things. But I mean, they're trying to be godly people, and this is how they're doing it. And I got nothing bad to say about it. That's a whole different Vince than a few years ago.
Yeah. My change happened dealing with a brother who was schizophrenic that found Christ, but he was still garbled, and my wife's brain damaged nephew. And pretty soon it dawned on me that my salvation is thoroughly and completely in the hands of Jesus, not in the hands of my understanding or my interpretations, anything. So I'm really free in a lot of ways, not to take advantage of that, but to trust that my eventual destiny is totally in his hands. And there's a good hands to be in.
Yeah, those are great hands. I think the journey of life, our journey is waking up to that reality. And that takes a long time. What's holding me back is me.
And Mike, I'm going to give you guys an example of this struggle, and whether or not it's a byproduct or whether it's a goal of being Christ-minded. I was just walking around Indianapolis yesterday, and this gal was sitting there begging, and she asked how I was doing. I said, I'm fine. How are you doing? She goes, well, I could use some prayer. So I prayed with her, and then found out she was in need of, money. I had a 5 in my hat. That's all I had. So I gave her that, and I said, I wish I could do more. So here's the struggle. Was I doing this because this woman was in need, and I, through a Christ-like mind, saw that need and had empathy and was able to pray with her? Or was I doing that because I wanted a good feeling about helping somebody out? Is that, that struggle between selflessness and selfishness? It's a daily thing, and I can be doing the right thing, but if my motive is just to prop up how I'm feeling that day, then I've just missed the mark.
Okay, Jeff,
So
take the
Jeff,
different.
How can
Does it matter, really?
Yeah.
Does it matter? I mean, you drive yourself out of your mind.
Do you think
Yeah.
Jesus felt? Do you think Jesus felt good about what he did?
I think he did, because he had the mind of Christ. I mean, his motives were completely selfless. Mine, I have to battle that. What are my motives?
So
Why
Jeff,
am I doing this?
yeah, did you think before you did it, or did you just do it?
I just did it. That's the thing,
your
though.
answer. There you go.
Right. But what I'm saying is I can start out and I can say, wow, this woman is in need. I can pray with her. I can help meet a need. And that is good. But as I'm going through the process, even, I'm going, wow, what's my motive here? Am I doing this with this person, selflessly, with this person in mind? Or is this so I can tell these guys, hey man,
I don't think she
I prayed
cared.
with this woman. I gave her money.
I don't think it
good
made a
guy.
difference to her. She's like the blind man. I don't know. I could see now.
This guy gave you 5,
I got a $5 bill.
Hey,
Too
Jeff,
much thinking.
we give you permission to feel good about it.
Okay. But do you guys understand what I'm saying, though?
I
As
do.
far as-
Yes,
yeah,
yes. I mean, you're
I
speaking
don't,
for the
I
rest
don't know
of
if
us.
this helps, Jeff, but in 12-step programs, there's actually a saying about calling things smart selfishness that you do. Okay. So I don't know whether that principle applies to what you're talking about, but to me, there's going to be an element of yourself and everything in terms of what you do.
Yeah.
And when you do that, and in the context of following the 12 steps, it's smart selfishness in terms of it's
Yeah.
good for you. I don't know whether that
That's-
principle.
no,
Yeah, that
That's
helps.
good.
Hey, guys, we're gonna sign off, and it's 8:10. We've gone 10 minutes over. We're gonna go next week, and have a good week, guys. Thanks for your sharing.
See everyone.
Yeah.
See ya.
Okay.